eyes, again, to provide the strategic direction for what we're doing in terms of the planning process, to connect, to make sure that we are speaking with the stakeholders and the community members that are integral to this process. And we feel that that is one of the key roles of the steering committee alongside the team here at Visit Walton County. Challenge. This is one of the, I think, more strategic parts of what we look for the steering committee, is to challenge some of the findings in the research and to help us validate through that process of that just doesn't feel right. And then to guide the overall vision that at the end of the day, the steering committee will present, and in our past experiences, will present to the board the vision and how that comes out. And it's really important that steering committee help us guide that. So again, it really reflects the collective lens of the community. Review is another important aspect of this. There's ongoing work. It's not one thing that can be done at a sort of one point in time, because there's several parts of this project that are integral to the interconnectedness of all of the information. And then finally, to help recommend and create the deliverables that we present for the final approval of the board. So some of the topics, to give you some just brief examples of where we engage the steering committee. The index is a framework, and it has really some important quantitative portions of it that lead us into the qualitative discussions that we get into with the stakeholder and the community engagement parts of the process. With 75 points of our data, we have a lot to discuss and challenge and look at to make sure, again, that this does fit with how you see the landscape. These 75 points of data become very important as we begin to index and look at the other communities that surround Walton County and that are also out there competing for the same tourism dollars to come into their community. And we look at various aspects of this community. We look at the scale, the concentration, the mix between leisure and business, the environmental readiness, urban readiness, safety and security, and then clearly the prioritization of policy. We've done a lot of work with the team at Visit Walton County in terms of the competitive set. This is another area that's really important for the steering committee to take a deeper dive into and really help us contextualize the information from these competitive regions in the country that we're looking at and using as one of the main points of analysis for what we're doing with the plan and the strategic direction. As we talked about connecting, one of the most important aspects of the work that we feel we are lucky enough to do in the communities is to really talk to a lot of traditional and non-traditional stakeholders and engage this process of meeting and really reviewing with the members of the community how they view tourism, what their hopes and aspirations are for the future, and where they see opportunity to redirect and continue with the work that's being done. And so making sure that we are connecting with and connected to and having the opportunity to speak with these varied stakeholders is a very important role of the steering committee as well as the staff. The demand driver scorecard, another area that we're right in the thick of with the team at Visit Walton County. And as we complete this work on this research, again, to come in and challenge the research, to ask questions, to help direct and guide this is an ongoing process, because this is not just a single week or 2 week study. This takes us about 6 to 7 weeks to complete effectively. And throughout there, 2 or 3 touch points is really important with the steering committee to review the data alongside what we're seeing with the index. And then finally, with the event matrix. Again, another part, all of this information leading to an assessment of not only where Walton County is currently, but where there are opportunities and paths to move forward with some different priorities and some opportunities. So each of these examples are where we feel it's really important to have that regular engagement. This isn't something that's done in a 2.5-hour session at the completion of a 6-month process. This is something that really takes a lot of direction as we move through this process, so that at the end, those recommendations and deliverables are in fact a true representation of what the community sees and hopes and has as its goals and aspirations for the tourism economy. So I'll leave my presentation there and go to some discussions.
Questions of the committee? Council members, any questions, any comments?
Well, I think one of the things when we, that I think the group wanted to better understand relative to the steering committee is what the time commitment that you envision. Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. I think one of the things that the committee wanted to better understand is, as the steering committee, the expectations from a time perspective, just for planning for all of us. Is that one of the things we talked about? So could you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, I hope I indicated that the steering committee work is not a presentation mode. It's really a discussion mode, and there are, again, if this is an hour and a half once a month, that's pretty typical to what we do.
Okay.
There are some times when we get into the competitive set analysis and the index that may be a little longer, but this isn't a 4 or 5 hour commitment once a month, really an hour to an hour and a half. And again, the goal here is to keep the discussions focused where there is, again, challenge, questions, opportunities, but it's not a 30-minute touch base either. So hour to hour and a half every month is sort of what our normal rhythm is.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Do you have anything further?
I would just say one of the things that I think is important is there's a mode that we kind of get into where you can be in the present mode or you can be in the discussion mode. And I think we find that having that steering committee be a break from that traditional presentation format is really important. And so while there is an opportunity to maybe have the TDC board meeting and then step aside and then do the steering committee meeting, I think that we would want to be very intentional in how we make that break so that not only do our minds shift, but sort of the processes shift as well. So we get into that mode where this really is a discussion, not a presentation.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So I would ask, is this, collectively as a body, do we think that we're moving in the right direction? Are we in a better position now than we were at this point last year? Are we getting what we're asking out of JLL?
Well, and I think
Are there things that we need to ask them to?
I think we're really just in the very early stages of the process.
Yeah, we're a month and a half into a 6-month project, so I think we feel that we've gotten off to a really good start because there has been some really good work on the index, the demand driver scorecard, the event matrix. Our initial round of stakeholder discussions were very positive and created some really important sort of aha moments for us. I think, Commissioner Drake, it's been too short to answer that question from my perspective.
Well, I guess I should have qualified that I was talking about based on today's presentation and what you presented. Does that look like the kind of content that we're looking forward to set the framework for the steering committee and the goals for the next year?
I think
Is there
so.
anything that we missed?
The only thing I would question is just a little curiosity on the competitive set. Obviously, Destin, Fort Walton, and Panama City by geographic location, certainly I get. Some of these others, like Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, how did we establish what the competitive set was?
That was done in conjunction with the staff at Visit Walton County, and this is, again, where
Okay.
we think
I
the
was just
steering committee is
curious.
so important. We want to come down and validate this. This isn't just Matt's competitive set. This is the collective competitive set of the community. So this is a point, again, Amy, a perfect example. We sit down, we discuss why. This is what we found in our research. This is what Matt and the team know from either lost business or who they see at trade shows, all those different types of things.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because some of them were surprising to me, so that's great. It's great.
Scott, I'll just say I've been impressed with our conversations and the work you guys are doing. I'm really actually looking forward to this process. Can we expect in advance of the steering committee meetings to have a little bit of an agenda or some questions, just something to get thoughts going beforehand? So that
Yes,
we make
please.
most of our time.
Yes, we would. Our habit is to get, or our goal is to get an agenda out before each steering committee meeting, as well as content to be reviewed before that meeting.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
And I would clarify one thing. We understand our goal to really be a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, which I think, again, is why this steering committee is so important. If this was an annual review of a marketing plan or your goals for the next year, I think that would be a very different process. But what we're really, I think, under the task is creating a strategic framework that will guide those annual plans for the next 3 to 5 years. And so I think there are times when I think our moment of inflection is this a moderate sort of shift, or are there some sea changes that will happen? And I think those are the discussions that these tools we've engaged, that Matt and the team are engaging with, are going to give us those indications. Is this incremental or is this a market change?
Question. Is your company involved in doing any planning for Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Pensacola, Panama
Currently, no.
City?
Nope. There may be a component of JLL that's doing a development for a municipality, because with public institutions, with PDS, it's a fairly large company. Our practice, the tourism practice, is not engaged in any of those communities right now.
Anything else? Seeing none, Mr. Beck, thank you. We
Thank you for
appreciate
your time,
service.
and thank you for your commitment to this process. Thanks.
All right, next up, we will have our discussion and recommendation for the 2026 event grant program presented by Ms. Kelly Carter. Ms. Carter, you're recognized.
Morning, Council. Thank you for taking the time to review the materials in front of you today. These documents represent all the applications submitted to you for this year's marketing event grants. We had 77 in total, which is the most we've ever had. Of those, 22 are located in what we would call the authentic Walton area, and 50 are in South Walton. As you may recall, in previous years, we talked about how the marketing committee was responsible for scoring these applications, and this committee was made up, the marketing committee obviously was made up of marketing professionals, but when this comes up for them to do, it's during the heavy spring vacation time, and due to all of the things that they have going on, they often had a hard time getting these complete. So in response from you guys and me sending it out to you and with input from you all, we implemented a new approach this year, and we convened a 5-person scoring committee made up of respected community members. And while all of them bring really valuable perspectives, not all of them have backgrounds in marketing or event planning. And because of this, we recognize there may have been some challenges in evaluating events that were less than familiar to them. So that kind of brings us to where we are today and kind of like what I'm calling the funding thresholds. Historically, we've recommended funding for events that received a score of 75 or higher. If we apply that same threshold this year, 37 of the 77 events would qualify with a total funding of approximately $480,000 out of the 700. So, because I like to have options, I went back and I looked, and the staff and I looked, and alternatively, we could consider a more inclusive threshold by maybe lowering the cutoff to 60 or higher, and then we could fund 63 of the 77 events, which would align more closely with our budgeted amount of $700,000. And finally, because I think I'm a nice person, I went and gave a third option, which is to fund all 77 events, allocating a portion of the $700,000 budget to each applicant. I know that each approach kind of carries, I just try to think of fairness, impact, community engagement, and, especially in light of the adjusting scoring process, but I'm open for discussion for you all. Again, I think that some of the 5 members that scored it may not are not as used to marketing and events as maybe the marketing committee was in the past. And I noticed some abnormalities in how things were scored, and so that's why I went back and I looked at it. If you scored this one, how did you score this one? Kind of looking to see if I could see if there was like a rhyme or a reason. And I couldn't really find that. So then I was like, okay, if we lower the scoring to 60, then that pretty much contains most of the events that we've funded in the past and kind of contains where it is. But obviously, I look to you all for whatever you would like me to move forward with.
Any questions, comments, suggestions?
I wish Jennifer was here because I think she's our resident expert on the topic in a lot of ways. But
So she did. She was one of the council members that recommended one of her staff members to score the events. So we did have Gabby Calloway on the board, on the 5 panel. And just so you know, I tried to kind of keep it like some people from kind of everywhere. So I had Maggie Weaver from the Hilton. She's the director of marketing and sales, or maybe marketing and communications. And then someone kind of outside of that, I had Jenna Varney, which is Artist of the Year. She's was former Artist of the Year. She's pretty involved in some of the things we do. Megan Marshall, at the time when I asked her to do that, she was working for sales at Hotel Effie. Since then, they've made some changes in who they have working for them, and she's no longer employed there, but she's still got 15 years of sales experience. And then my fifth one was Gabrielle Hamilton of the Chamber. Again, they're all great people and they have great knowledge, but they may not have quite understood what we were looking for with wanting the marketing, PR, and event challenges that we have.
Billy,
Just somewhat high level, can you remind us of the high level criteria that you use to get to the 70%?
Oh yeah. So it's basically you have it's an online scoring that we've put in that you do the back end of the website, and the scoring is when is your event? You get so many points if your event is within different times. Obviously, you get 0 points if it's in the summer. You get more points if it's in the shoulder season. That you can demonstrate that you've worked with lodging partners to bring in overnight guests. Also, what does your marketing plan say? How do you plan on using this money? And additionally, just things like, is this a new event? Do you have a refined marketing plan? Some of the newer events, maybe if you compare a newer event to an older event, maybe you didn't think the newer event had the same kind of good marketing plan a more established event has. So that's kind of not equal. So you kind of have to like weigh that a little bit, but that's most of the questions. Okay. And I also, for this, we have what I call a FAQ. And if you'll just, when you do the application, if you go down the FAQ and you answer those questions, it tells you how to fill out the application, because the application is going to be kind of cumbersome. And I realized asking someone in April that is a very busy person in marketing to score 77 applications was not working well. So we just need to find some other mechanism to get this to work well. The problem is we need it to work within the budget cycle. It's kind of like the two for trying to like figure it out. And I'm already asking somebody to tell me about an event they're going to have in September of 2026 when we're in April of 2025.
I guess a couple of things that we might.
for the sake of pointing out, this is a reimbursement program, so they have to submit actual invoices for any funding they receive.
Off. Okay. So, and also, but I think on the flip side of that, we have to be extremely careful that we don't fund events just for the sake of funding because we have it in the budget. It's definitely, in my opinion, a balancing act. I mean, I can glance your 480 number, and they're the typical things that we would expect to, I think, see.
Well, I guess the ultimate question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is our objective here? Are we trying, are all of these organizations meeting the objective of our visitation mission? Or are some of these just, we've just decided that while we expect the same audience that we've had year after year after year, it's just kind of something that we accept that we're just going to pat our friends on the back and just pay for these activities? Or are we actually looking for a new market or a new target marketing group? Are we looking for some objective that we're trying to expand our marketing base, our visitor base? I mean, what is it? Are we okay with anyone that asks us for, a contribution? Do we have any criteria that we want to go through and make a checklist? I mean, I guess that's a collective question for the group.
So where I came up with the 60%, just so that you're aware, we did 75% higher. I felt like there were some abnormalities.
Well, hold on just a second. But like, I understand your measurement scale, but I'm talking about the qualification scale. I mean, could just any group get together and say, hey, there's marketing dollars available, let's get out there and let's see how we can get scored? Or to be to be a participating party or an entrant into this market, this marketing opportunity? Is there criteria that has to be met?
Yes, sir.
to actually be considered?
Yes,
And-
sir.
and then
There's an
what is that?
application process. Similar to what I just talked to Ms. Wisecoble about was you have to submit your marketing plan. You have to submit where you're working with local accommodation partners. You also submit your previous years. If you have a previous year attendance record, you can submit like what, if it's a ticket sales, you can obviously pull in your zip codes and stuff and tell you where the people are coming from, your attendance, that sort of thing. All of that's captured within there. Where I looked at it and I felt like there were some abnormalities in there. If you will notice on the 75% and higher, Art Month scored 75% and higher, but Arts Quest scored less than 75%. Obviously, we all know Arts Quest actually brings in people. Art Month, however, is something we're just celebrating Art Month. So yes, let's have some if we wanted to have some dollars to put towards celebrating the fact that it's Art Month, but I can actually see return on Arts Quest where Arts Month is a harder return for me. So that's why I went back and looked at it and was like, okay, let me see where some abnormalities are and how it was scored. And I think no matter what we do here, I think moving forward, we need to get back together and come up with a better committee or a different committee that has a different outlook on some things and maybe some additional scoring and stuff if we would like to do that to make it tighter, to make it less subjective. And so that way we know what we're getting is not just, somebody just gave answers to it. I'm not saying anybody did that, but when you see abnormalities like that, you kind of have to check out where it went from there, if that makes sense.
I guess my question is if we're paying for an event, let's say we've been paying for it for 10 years, 20 years, and each year we expect 100 people to show up, and it's the same 100 people, are we meeting our objectives?
Yes. So one of their objectives in the application is, did you bring more people than last year? So that is, what was your last year's attendance? What was your this year's attendance? And also, did you put it out to any different markets than is normal that's normally from the circle of markets? And some of them, put it out Memphis, Chicago, other places.
You're recognized.
Thank you. I am of the opinion of just because we have the 700,000 doesn't mean we have to spend it all. And I liked your list of that meets the 480,000 through the scoring method of the 75 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's how I feel is probably the best money spent. Some of the events I do recognize in that 60 range, and I'm not sure that we're bringing, new folks in here, so to speak. So that would be where I would stand. I would like to go with the 75 points or higher with the list of the 480. That's what I think.
Madam Vice Chair.
I think my question, thank you, Kelly, I got your 480. I'm following the spreadsheet all the way through. When you drop below that to the total of 90, is that just a combination of I'm having a little bit of trouble following where the money is allocated. Is that an additional 90 that's optional? You said we had a mid-range.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So on the 60% or higher, all of Authentic Walton, if we were to fund them, adds up to $90,000.
Gotcha.
And then the next one, if we were to fund all the 60% and higher for South Walton, it adds up to $610, which gets me to that $700,000.
I got you. So if I'm looking at what we're not going to fund, I go all the way to the bottom list. Are they even?
They're not even on there. If we're not going to fund them, they're not even on there.
Okay, so there's no way to look at what we're cutting if we just go at the 480 level?
It's the 60s, right? They're not together, but it's 460s.
Yeah, I mean, I can go
I'm sorry,
through.
I see the score column now. My
Okay.
apologies. Let me just glance for another second if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think for me, it's twofold. It's driving business 110% primary goal, but it's also valuable activities when our guests are in our community and what really builds our brand, which is that overall experience. So under this scenario, we would or would not be funding Emerald Coast Theater Company's season.
We would not.
I saw that, I finally got your scoring. I apologize. That's just
Yeah,
my
so
blindness.
when you're looking at this, so just looking at it the way it is, obviously, anything that's, less than 75, you're not gonna fund. So when you're looking at that, I can just kind of give you a quick rundown. For Authentic Walton, that would be the Harvest Festival, which is held at the Chautauqua Winery. Bayfest, which is our only Freeport event. Let's see.
Not what?
Mary Main Street and Chautauqua Assembly, Wine Walk, Summit on the Circle, the Spring Festival for the Chautauqua Winery, Wine Release Party, and the Main Street Defuniak Farmers Market. We would not fund any of those at the 60% or higher. At the 75% higher. Sorry, I apologize.
I have a question. How are we collecting our data? Like, if we're using that to be the mechanism for scrutinizing these projects and ranking them, are we just saying, hey, how many did you have last year and how many did you have this year? And they just answer it.
No, there is a whole mechanism of how you score it. So there's 8 different questions.
Well, no, that component, that piece, I'm curious if you mentioned that they have to validate what their participation was in the previous year and then what it is this year. How do we collect that?
They put it in the application.
So we just say, hey, what did you have last year? And they tell us, and then what
Or
did you
they-
have the next year?
Yeah,
And
they tell us how many people showed up, and then some of them
But
like
we have no way to actually validate that.
some of them that work with accommodation partners, for example, the Seaside Half Marathon. Those people, they tend to stay in Seaside, so they work out a code with Seaside. So then Seaside, which would be homeowners collection, and anybody else that rents in Seaside will say that they had this many. Say it's Baytown Wharf Beer Festival, they have a code that goes along with their tickets, and they show what their ticket sales are. It's much easier for an event that takes place within a planned neighborhood, say Watercolor, Seaside, or someplace like that, to have ticket sales to go with it, so you got a room. Then other things, say say South Walton Beaches Wine and Food Festival, they partner with the Hilton and they partner with Newman Daily. So they can get that information, and they include that from those, some of those. Now, some of these, we call them, there's a signature event which receives the most amount of money. That can be up to $20,000. There's an experience event that can receive up to $10,000. And then we have what we call, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, a smaller event, say Flutterby or something like that, that you might not travel for, but if it's here, you're going to go to it. We call it, I cannot think of what the name of it is for right now. I'm sorry, but they only get $5,000 or less. So obviously, something that's much smaller is going to get that $5,000 level and have to do that. And then a mid-size, so a smaller level event would be like Flutterby. A larger level would be like Baytown Wharf Beer Festival. Largest level will be 30A Songwriters Festival, South Walton Beaches Wine and Food Festival.
Kelly, I think the question was going more towards the reliability or the safeguards we have in place. Is somebody just saying we had 1,000 people last year and we had 1,000 people this year? It sounds like, as I understand it, it is dependent on the applicant to give us that data, and the quality of that data may vary applicant to applicant. Is that a fair assessment?
True. Yes, sir.
So one applicant may have a great amount of backup data to support their numbers, and another one may just write the numbers in and have no supporting data.
Yes, and like I said, it's always going to be much easier for those events that are held in those those neighborhoods, because they have the ability to track it. Those events that may not have the ability to track it.
Kelly can't answer this, but if it's budgeted for 700,000 and you've spent 700,000, of course, my question
I know.
is, if we drop down to 400,000, where's that 300,000 go? So many times in a government budget, if you don't spend it, then it's taken out of the next year's budget. So if we were to just cut it in half, for example, 350,000, where does it go? It'll just be spent somewhere else?
No, I think that would be part of the direction. So say you all chose the option to only fund the 400,000 option, then if that was the option, we would then say, okay, what are the intentions with the remainder of that budget? Would you like for us to use that for additional marketing efforts, or if it's unspent budget, it would just go into reserves at the end of the
Reserves?
year? Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Connors, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, sir. Mine was basically piggybacking on the same questions you were already asking. The quantitative data is, I'm assuming this is based on TDT and actual lodging numbers, but with ticket sales, also, you could have your transitory visitors coming through purchasing tickets, but they didn't actually lodge in and contribute to the TDT. So with that being said, I can see this being much larger as far as trying to justify the application. And I like what you said as far as engaging local business partners. That could extend even further to restaurants and everybody else and tying them all together to one community to build a stronger market. But with that being said, even like the Main Street Merry Christmas, it ties to Christmas reflections in our town of Defuniak. And I know for a fact that we have people actually come in and they stay. It's just trying to capture that. And you and I have had this conversation in the past about that's what we really want to build here is that relationship and engaging those partners that lodge. So my question would be, is it the low scores on the applications for those areas, is it due to the fact that they didn't put in that effort to collect that data from previous years, or is it
Or they just
more-
don't have it. Or
Right.
they just, if it's something, like I said, if it's Mary Main Street, they know they have the number of guests and they know they have that, but they don't know where they stay because it's not really, it goes for, it's like every Friday in or every Saturday in December, or say the farmer's market, it's all year long. And it's one of those things that we also look at, building the brand in different places. And, sometimes we look at, do they need is this going to a need as far as marketing, like 38 Songwriters Festival? Yes, they do use the $20,000 in marketing, but it also puts that South Walton brand with that major brand and ties them together so that you understand that. So there's something to be said for that, and that's why the application, you're kind of supposed to like read it within there, and there's different things on the application that you can put in there. So that was the whole reason why when I looked at it, when I'm looking at the fact that something like I know the beer festival brings people in and they stay overnight, but it made 74, so it doesn't qualify this year. So I get that. I mean,
I can even understand it for like the food truck Fridays. That's people that live here that are just going down to venture into food trucks. There's no TDT associated with
Yes.
that. So therefore, it's not impacting the overall pot of money to where we fund all these events and keep bringing people back in.
And most Authentic Walton events are not, just for the truth, and that's why they receive very little money, $5,000. But that $5,000 does help them advertise that in numerous places, and maybe they are getting people that come down from Dothan. Maybe they are getting people that come in from Pensacola. Please recall that this money has to be spent outside of Okaloosa, Walton, and Bay County. So if you receive $5,000, you can't just go put it in the Defuniak Herald for, and call that advertising.
So is this something that you work with those applicants even after the scoring and
Oh,
after the
everything. So I have a person in the office, that's their whole job. And this is what they do year round. So every ad that they put together, we approve it and we make sure that it's going to the right place. We help them put together their marketing plan for every little thing. And we also offer ways that they can spend their money together. Additionally, in addition to what we put here, we also have money in the budget that is my seasonal marketing events. And so these events that are part of this also get their own page on the website, and seasonally we drive traffic to these events. So while they may not be getting out there, we are putting whatever that season is, just because it's Mary Main Street or the Sandestin Turkey Trot. You might not have came for that, but you might find out about it because we're putting it out through all of our digital marketing as well.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just real
Mr.
quick,
Moffitt.
my 2 cents for what it's worth. For the record, I'm a huge proponent of the program for all the reasons we're talking about. I think especially to the extent that it drives visitation and additional dollars to the community, I think it's fantastic. That being said, one of the things that we asked you guys to do a week or so ago by way of prioritizing reserves was effectively trim 5% out of your annual budget. And I think we got to start looking for ways to do that, right? As Tim kind of implied, hey, what happens if we don't spend that extra $220,000? And part of my thoughts on it is we're considering lowering our standards just to contribute more money, right, to events that may or may not, right, didn't reach that threshold, may or may not drive visitation. I would say to the extent that we're certain that these events drives visitation, absolutely support it. But I wouldn't suggest that we spend the money just to spend the money when we're trying to go the other direction.
Yeah, you're recognized.
I guess my biggest concern, Kelly, and I appreciate you coming up and hitting it head on, but in looking at these scoring metrics, there's some real extreme oddities, like a Bloody Mary Festival coming up, even over things that are making the list. I guess my question would be, is there any time to step all the way back and rescore? I hate to say something like that, but I don't know that we can make the decision. When I look at what drives room nights and what we pretty much know doesn't, we got a lot of oddities in these scores.
And that's where I came in with the 60%. I just so you know, this has been the bane of my existence for the past 2 weeks. I have tried everything under the sun to try to figure out what happened. I've pulled everybody's scores. I mean, at the end of the day, it is just whatever someone scored it. So I would not mind doing that. I could also send, we could also do some kind of thing if you all wanted to score them, just like a 1 through 5 or whatever you wanted to do. If you all wanted to score them, again, I can pull everyone's scores and do this. I just think there's, like you said, there are a lot of abnormalities. I don't mind giving out $480,000. That makes my life way easier. I'll give out whatever you want because that means there's $220,000 I don't have to chase at the end of the year. But I just didn't want to put something in front of you all that I did not feel was worthy of the program. The program, and I am a little biased because I've been doing this program for like 17 years. So there's things that did not qualify that I'm well aware put heads in beds, and they could use the money to get it into certain places. And then I think there's other things that that got scored in that I'm like, I can't make that consideration. So I'm open for whatever you all would like me to do, but I just want to make sure I want to be able to stand in front of those event partners and say that we were fair and equitable. And obviously I can do that with saying that we had an independent scoring committee do that, but then also we can look back and say maybe we had a little mishap with the scoring committee. Maybe we need to have a different scoring committee.
Does the scoring have to be strictly objective, or is there room? I don't know if there's some kind of guideline right on how this is.
It's, when I say it's subjective, it's each score, each portion. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it. You can give them 1 through 10 for each one. And some of them, if you have this and you have this and you have this, it gives you this score. So that should be the way it's done, but not everybody always follows that.
Man, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, to be clear, you cannot have a fully subjective model, but there is no way in a committee-based scoring system where there's, I think it's this good versus you think it's that good, that there's not some subjectivity to it. What I would say is there need to be objective metrics with some subjective discretion allowed within the scoring of each of those metrics. For instance, is this going to bring, there has to be a yes, no. Is it going to put heads in beds? If that's a criteria, that's got to be a yes, no. How much influence it has or how much impact it has, that's the subjective element. But if it's purely subjective, that's where you can get into a problem. But I would also remind everybody, this has come up many times before, and I know Kelly remembers this. If you wanted it to be fully subjective, the bottom line is it's still a reimbursement grant on marketing. You could just say, we're going to let it be open season, let everybody apply, and we're not going to have any criteria. But you can't, you're better off having an objective one because then somebody's going to complain. But you could do that because it's reimbursement of money they spent to market the area. So under our statutory guidance, if money is spent to market an event for tourists, and we can show it was marketed to tourists, that money was legally spent pursuant to Florida statute.
I'm just wondering, sorry.
I'm sorry, well,
Let's go to Mr. Taylor.
the
Yeah, you
county
recognize.
commissioner, when you're appointed to this board, it's not just heads and beds. We've had Micah on here from Seaside, we've had Jim Shirley serving on the board, so some of these events may not necessarily mean heads on beds, but it may also mean that it's helping commercial enterprise in our county with the restaurants and different things like that, and they may not be renting a room, but I don't think every decision we make should have to be based on, are they renting a place? Because there's a lot of people drive in for these events.
And there is a question on there that talks about, do you feel like this event is an event that makes South Walton or Authentic Walton a better place to come to? Do you feel that this is one of the reasons, do you think this is an event that you would travel to, you would take your family to? Obviously, that's going to rule out like the tattoo festival, you know what I'm saying? That might not be what they're looking for, you know? So things that are, maybe it's a you know, something that's not, doesn't meet our brand. It talks about the brand and you want whatever this is to go forward with the brand.
I mean, it all goes back to the, you know, the original question, I guess, that I posed earlier is it meeting the objectives of this board? Or are we meeting our visitation objectives, whatever that may look like? You know, to some of us, heads and beds may have a priority. For some of us, emerging markets may be a higher priority. Maintaining existing markets may be a high priority. I mean, we can spend the money however we want as long as we're following the guidance of the statutes. It's just, you know, it's up to this body to determine where we want to focus our interests. You know, should it be need-based? Should it be return-based? I mean, these are all things that we have to answer, or that we can allow ourselves to dictate. I guess that's kind of what I'm asking of the board, is what is our visitation objective? What are we looking for? I mean, obviously, we don't want to get rid of the goose that laid the golden egg. I mean, we have things like Taste of the Race and the 38 Songwriters. The people, that's an annual event. I mean, that's locked in, just like the Masters and Augusta is locked in every year. You're going to have a target. You're going to have a specific audience that's going to come. So you want to continue to nurture that group because, I mean, it makes sense to do that. So that's kind of like, I guess, in terms of determining what our objective is we will prioritize, you know, what our vision looks like. Do we want to maintain an audience? Do we want to build additional audience? Do we need to ramp up the need-based communities? If it's something in the city of Paxton where maybe there was only 50 people that attended, but we can get people from Georgia or Alabama to attend, I guess that's what we have to answer.
Right. Well, some are off and running. 38, that's a money-making operation. 38 Songwriters sure doesn't need anything from us. Moon Crush is just a tremendous success. So there's lots of things on here that are already doing quite well. Nonprofits, the theater group.
I didn't make it.
They're bringing in a lot. Maddie Kelly. They're all worthwhile events, but some are really big money making at 38 especially, and Moon Crush.
And I think for longer term, right, big picture, I think that's part of what we should be discussing, and maybe this can be part of Scott and his team's, you know, scope of work. It's probably on his radar, right? But do these events align with the long-term vision, right, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years? I guess my kind of underlying purpose for my question before about how we score and objectivity, right, is maybe can we as a council trust Kelly and her team to make some fine adjustments, right? I think there's a lot of things on the bubble here on, you know, scoring wise. Can we trust her and her team to say, okay, hey, this is one that needs to be funded, and maybe this is one that doesn't quite make the cut?
And just for an example, and I think sometimes people don't understand what events are, I want to just throw one out there. The 31st Annual Hilton Sandestin Invitational. It is in between Christmas and New Year's. when I say it fills up the Hilton, it's gotten so big. It fills up the Hilton, the Embassy, the Hyatt, the Residence, all of those in there. And it's held in Freeport. They get $5,000. And it's basically to buy the t-shirts and to stream our commercials during the streaming of the basketball tournament. And it didn't make the cut this year. We've funded it for 25 years. So this is the first year it didn't make the cut. So
That's one I keyed in on, and I think, Kelly, I can tell you, first and foremost, I was the first one that said, I don't want to necessarily spend $700,000, but I could never in good conscience vote for the 480 based on so many of the discrepancies. That was one of the top on
Yes.
my list, is some of the discrepancies I'm seeing in here of things that shouldn't, I mean, like you said, Art Month coming in at 89 versus so many of these others that didn't make the cut. I'm not against Art Month. I'm just saying this is, the scoring on these is not, in my mind, and to your question, Commissioner Drake, for me, it is two things. It either drives room nights or it enhances the customer's experience, thus our brand, while our guests are in-house. Those are, in my humble opinion, the two driving criteria that we're looking for, but we've got some grave discrepancies in this.
and that was my issue with, that's why I tried to like pull together what made the most amount of sense. Obviously I can go back and adjust the money any way you want me to. I mean, if you want me to say, you know, like, even if you wanted me still to do the 60% and get that down to $500,000 and still have $200,000, I could do that. You know, I could do whatever you're asking me to do. I don't want to say it's an arbitrary amount, but a signature event can receive up to $20,000. An experience event can receive up to $10,000, and a neighborhood event, that's what we call it. Sorry, it finally came to me. A neighborhood event is up to $5,000. So, I mean, I could go back and look at, you know, some of these other ones and redo the money so that it doesn't come up to $700,000.
When you said it where it stands right now, and we do have some guests.
Well, it'll be appropriate once we finish our discussion, then we can
Gotcha.
let the
Okay,
audience.
I didn't know if you could see hands. So, I mean, I just hate, because I know I can't imagine how much time you spent on this once you saw these come back, because I know you and how conscientious you are. I'm just trying to figure out, because now we have a public record of how things were scored.
Yes.
So I guess this comes back to you, Clay. How do we best make sure that this is representative of our goals?
So as always, the committee that does the scoring is making a recommendation to you. You are not bound by that recommendation, and you always have the fundamental right as the ultimate decision maker of this. Now, ultimately, it goes to the BCC. You aren't the final say, but the TDC can say, we're going to rescore it ourselves. We think this was not representative of what we want to do. I'm also going to say this. I think fundamentally, if you ever had a year to say, we're just not going to accept these rankings and we're going to do something different, it's this year, where a week ago you made the decision to trim 5% off the budget and to hold that into reserve money. You just changed the game for how this would have to be scored and allocated. So that being said, this is a perfect time if you want to say we're going to reset on this. And certainly I can tell you, I'm looking at the scores here. There's no rhyme or reason. So if you don't want to accept them, I don't think you're going to be in trouble for saying, well, we didn't follow that guidance.
So then could we have Kelly potentially rescore or us look at them?
Microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Could we have Kelly and her team maybe rescore, or we rescore, or how do we want to move forward then?
Be the prerogative of the board, whatever you want. We can do anything we want.
I mean, I just want to caution first and foremost, because Kelly knows I have been involved in this many, many years. And I'm willing to do it, but it is the height of season. And I'm telling you guys, for those of us that commit to doing it, this is an extremely time-consuming process. You are talking hours and hours and hours to really give it a fair shake and make sure that each event is given their due diligence. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that we want to start over. I would think that possibly we want to, do we have time for you to give it back to your team, call us if you have questions and want our opinions, and then to bring us your recommendation back at the next meeting? Would that be something viable? Or are we under too much of a time crunch for that?
Well, you're kind of operating under a moving target. So if we scrap what we did, we send it back, and then we get, you know, a similar result to where there's, you know, I guess the terminology that's being thrown around is abnormalities. You're still going to capture that. I mean, we could even adopt a guideline if we accepted the recommendation of 79. What was the number?
There's a 70,
5 and up and a
75 and 60.
We could accept 75 and up, and if you have, if you felt like if Mr. Moffett or Ms. Hafner or Mr. Taylor, if someone was extremely passionate about a project, would just add that, you know, notwithstanding the recommendations, we'll augment the or supplement the list with a particular project. That may be an easy way, you know, and then
Okay.
we can collectively vote to accept it or reject it and go from there.
And I think, I don't disagree, and please, I'm sure you're all gonna wanna shoot me, I don't disagree that the 75 and up, that would be an easier route to go, but I think you have events in this that are above the 75 mark, that when you look at the big picture again, probably should not be at the 75 or above, and I'm just being honest at what I'm looking at, guys. I mean, that's my gut, but, I'm certainly at the will of the council, if that's the route we wanna go.
Why would we not want Kelly and her team to restart? Is there a reason why we wouldn't want them to do it versus us?
No, I think we're just all saying, or nobody really disagreed, that we're fine with them doing it. I think for Kelly and her team, it's a matter of timing, and then they need to get it back to us for,
We're just
a
pushing on the
vote.
time limit of, so if you are an event that's in October, I'm really pushing in. I always do this in June or July, try to do it in June, so that you know you have money and you can start promoting that October event. As you all know, you don't start promoting it in October. You have to start promoting it sooner. So obviously and then also that allows, when I know what the events are, I'm promoting that fall season with these events correctly. So I'm happy to do whatever you guys want me to do.
Arts Quest is at 73. And that's become a large event.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying, I agree, the anomalies are,
Like you have brought, but then Commissioner Drake mentioned that we can also say, hey, let's fund this one, even though it's below 75.
If I may, I think if you all want to task staff to go back and do this, if we can get it approved at the August meeting, we'll be fine to move forward if that's the direction.
I can do it. I mean, but
Curious, and let Mr. Sconyers go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll let Ms. Edwards
Oh,
go for
I'm
me, if
sorry.
you will. She's asked.
Sorry, and I apologize, I was late, I went to the wrong location. Are we setting a criteria then for her to go back? What exactly are we looking for from
Yeah,
these
that's-
specific events to drive that change in number? Because I think that for all of us to be accountable for some of these organizations, these questions are going to be asked. So if we, pick some that didn't hit the 75, but then some get some, we need to make sure that she has direction of exactly what we're targeting, and then that we can answer it to those groups.
Well, otherwise it's a moot exercise.
I
mean,
don't-
Well, that was the, well, hold on, give me a second if you will. That was the point or that was the point that I'm trying to drive home, is that we asked you to submit a list, and then your committee made a good, conscientious, concerted effort, a diligent effort in trying to satisfy that request. And now the board, we're not 100% happy. So unless we're tasking you with stipulations, like what are you going to do differently? I mean, are you going to try to answer that request based on what you think we want? Or are you still going to use a qualitative and quantitative method and hope that it meets to the level of our satisfaction? That's what I'm saying. We're tasking you to go out and do something without actually giving you any instructions or setting up any rules or parameters. So it's like you're doing the same exercise over again. How do we know that we're going to be satisfied the next time it comes back to us? I'm saying this for your benefit.
I know, that's why so that's, okay, so be honest, I thought of every one of these scenarios, and that's where I came up with the 60%. I'm not gonna lie. That, like, I looked at everything and, like, I was like, okay, this one should be there. I could take this one out, but I tried to look at who should be there based on, and I did that based on who's been funded in the past, what I personally know of the event and events I've attended, and then also I went back and looked at their applications. And so I'm like, I don't understand why this one received this, but I'm not gonna say that someone did it incorrectly. You do what you do to best of your ability. So that's where I came up with the 60%. That pretty much got those that needed to be funded, that should have been funded, in my opinion, based on what they've been funded in the past. Now, if you want me to, I did spread out the $700,000 because that's just always been our way to do that. You can tell me there's $500,000 and I can go back and spread that out between the 60%. I mean, you tell me what you would like me to do.
Well, and the only other thing, sorry.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would add to that is the parameters have been set for years, and the parameters traditionally have worked. So I don't know really. I'm not saying I have no clue what happened in this situation, but again, having personally scored on many different occasions, the parameters, i.e. date, lodging partners, marketing plan, new or existing, those have always been the things we've used. I just can't understand how they translated to this. But if we need to give new parameters, we certainly can.
I think it translated back into previously, you've always had marketing and events people score them. This year, we didn't have marketing and events people score them because we couldn't get that. I fully believe that's what it is. And if you're an artist, maybe you don't understand. Maybe Art Month's the greatest thing you ever heard of, but basketball tournament, and you're like, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm just saying I think the difference is the expertise of who scored it. So I think moving forward, we really need to work harder to identify people in the marketing and events world that it's not a conflict of interest for them to score it and have them score it moving forward.
But is it based on what they proved versus what you know, though? So
Yes.
did the applicant not fulfill their responsibility as to why the committee member rated them poorly? Or is it the fact that we have some cognitive bias based on knowledge versus what they actually submitted? And I only say that because of the liability issues here. It's like, did they do the right thing versus another one? And then my last comment, Mr. Chair, on it be, I agree with what Mr. Taylor was alluding to earlier. I don't think we should lower the score or the bar for the applicants. And with us looking at that 5% reduction, I think that's an excellent way to back what Clay was advising us on as well.
And I will add, just looking at the scores, if we were to go to that threshold, that would basically fund every authentic Walton event. So I just think that's something worth consideration for you all, because I think you can probably look at some of those on that list and they may make you scratch your chin.
You may need a separate criteria between authentic and South Walton for the cutoff. Is just a general observation there. You can look at the score distribution, and everybody clustered pretty close together on those authentic Walton events. And I'm wondering if that has a function to do with who was scoring those, just saying, well, it's good, not great, good, not great, good, not great. But literally, if you move it to 60, you're going to fund every one of those events. Sitting there looking at things, I don't see how on earth those would ever have been scored under any evaluation criteria that this TDC's ever used previously. So may have to think about, is there a different metric you're going to apply for North Walton events? Because is the aim of the board different? That goes back to Commissioner Drake's first point in the very start of this. What is the aim of the board? What are we doing this for? And it may not be the same between North and South, and that is okay. There can be different aims, but that has to be factored in somehow.
Before we go to the audience, is there anyone else on the board that has a question or a comment?
I had
I say-
one- Oh, sorry.
Can I say one additional
ahead.
thing? Previously, they were scored separately, and leadership in the past moved them together. I have no problem with them being scored separately again, but leadership in the past, that's not here any longer, put them together. So I did want to let you all know that, and it did have different criteria, but I was instructed to move them together.
Ms. Hafner?
Should we consider giving her a lower amount to spread out against all of them for this time and set a different criteria or different scoring for the next round since next year, I guess, since we're so close to the end? I don't know, we could tell her you have the $500,000 to spread out amongst everything for this cycle. And then, because there's some of these too, I don't understand the scoring that some I've never even heard of. And they're in the 80s and 90s. So, you know, I wonder if maybe we should try something like that for this cycle. And then the next cycle, we can have a little bit more of a tighter of really what we're looking for.
That's kind of where I was
Yeah.
going before. Is,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kelly and her team know, right? Especially there's a lot of history with a lot of these events, and
For
you guys
sure.
know what works and doesn't. And I know that we're trying to be as objective as possible on this, and it sounds like our objectivity was kind of subjective based upon, you know,
Yes.
the way
But
it
you
was.
know.
Yes.
And that's and that's
Yes.
okay, right? We know, some of the limitations of how these were scored, but I think based upon that, I mean, part of me just wants to say, we trust y'all to say,
too.
and, I hear where you're going, like, maybe there's a dollar amount, right? Let's work
Right.
within this dollar amount. We trust you guys to tweak this list as necessary, right? Or maybe reevaluate some of these anomalies as necessary and, propose a list that we're all confident, right, is the right list.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Ms. Harris?
I'd be happy to say that, but there's kind of no rhyme or reason as to what was. When they fill out their application, if you say that they're sales, so if Congress gives you that information, or the art thing gives you that information.
They put it, or write it down, but there's no.
Yeah, but there's some events where there are non-ticketed events. So, Mr. Bagney?
Hi, Kevin Rosa with the Hilton Sandestin Beach. I want to again support you. It is an arduous process. I've done it for the last 3 years. Did not do it this year, but I did for the last 3 years. And it's objective, it's subjective. There's a lot of emotions that do go into, but one thing that I know that you have to really concentrate on is bed tax. And is it bringing in some substantial bed tax? You just said a second ago that the Freeport basketball tournament and Coach Burnham, who puts this thing together, pulls in groups, pulls in high schools from Arkansas and Tennessee and everywhere, sells us out and sells out probably another 4 other hotels. That's $20,000 plus in bed tax that we're giving back to the county with all these guests coming in. Then it's all the Chick-fil-A bags and the pizza boxes and everything coming into the hotel. So it's those are the kind of things. So to see that it fell below,
And it only receives $5,000.
yeah, and it only gets five grand. And you know what? These kids love it. So, anyways, I just thought I'd make that comment. But it is a very tough, very arduous process.
It might be worth noting our local kids play as well. It's a Sherry's hotel.
It went sideways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think every one of you is right. I agree with not every kid gets a trophy thing, but you've kind of hit around the elements, I think, of what you want to do. A couple of macro things. This program was not just about driving TDT. it was about driving tourism. And those are not the same thing necessarily. It was about people want to drive over from Panama City Beach and participate and go, geez, we should be over here as opposed to over, we should move over here as opposed to over there. Or Destin or Pensacola or Tallahassee. We get tourists from those areas. We do staycations in South Walton all the time. And most of these events I've been to, not all of them. And there are some that are below the threshold, but I just give you a model of where I think y'all are headed, or I hope you're headed. Number one, the Authentic Walton, because when we originally set up the funding, we just funded it separately. And this was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. But it was only 30,000. Maybe not the farmer's market, because that really, but everything else, those other events at $5,000 a piece, fund them. I would say stick with the 75. I disagree with they didn't know what they were grading or whatever. That's fine. Y'all have all been in groups that graded events or people or whatever. You're going to have some variation in that, but usually the cream will rise to the crop. I would keep the 75 line and then allow the staff to bring you back exceptions to that policy. Okay? The basketball tournament is one of those exceptions. There are some clear, as I went through the list, some clear exceptions, and just have the staff say, here, this one didn't score above 75, but it brings $20,000 in TDT between Christmas and New Year's, which is a time we need to fill those hotels. The next thing I would say is on some of these annual events, if you notice, some of those went either January 1st to December 31st, or they went from July 1st to June 30th or whatever. I would cap, those are not signature events. They're good. Symphonia's good. Maddie Kelly, although my question on Maddie Kelly was, is that the event that's in Destin? Okay.
It's the dinner.
Okay. Okay, so they hold dinners at the Hilton. I've been to some of those. But they should be capped at $10,000. That's not a signature event. If it goes on for a 12-month period, it's not a signature event. So that we kind of missed in my opinion, missed the criteria there. The other thing I would tell you is, we go to a couple of Emerald Coast Theater events every year, especially like the ones on Winston Churchill that Bruce does, but we go to at least one or two a year. But they're getting $15,000 for their spring season and $15,000 for their fall season. You might relook that and say, that's the same thing. It's like a year-long event. We'll give you $10,000, or maybe you cap them at $15,000. But I would cap it at $500,000. I would say, so that funds all of North Walton, all of Authentic Walton, excuse me. That funds everybody above 75 points, and then they can bring you back exceptions. And as they lower some of those year-long or 3-month-long events to 10,000 from 20,000, then that gets you pretty much where you need to be on the sweet spot of driving tourism, not just TDT, tourism. And so the other thing that this points out is, we need to put some energy back into our committees in general, but specifically the marketing committee. That is a hard job. I know you know that. I know you know that. Those people give their time and do yeoman's work for nothing. And so, but they help the community. And so one of the things you might direct the staff to do is let's re-energize the committees, particularly the marketing committee for this process, because while we probably didn't have the best group, we had a group and they gave their time, and we ought to respect what they did. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any comments from the board? Any direction? Where do we want to go?
Are we looking, do we have to come up with a motion, Mr. Chair, or is this just staff direction based on the board's thoughts and comments?
if we're going to effectuate,
I mean, I echo what Kelly says. Our August meeting is late to get into the market for these fall events. Well, no, but if the marketing part of it is, hopefully they're gonna drive attendance to the events with the year we've had this year, so.
These events aren't being canceled just because they don't get 5,000. They're gonna go on. They're gonna go on if they're worth it. So there's no issues here. Mr. Bagby said, give them a $500,000 number to work with instead of $700,000, and then come back with ones that, due to whatever reason, are really important for fun.
but the other side of that sword is by adopting that strict policy, if you go 75 above, what you're saying to everyone north of the bay is that, we are prioritizing you with lesser respect, because most of the ones, once you get below 75, it's Defuniak, Freeport. I haven't looked to see if there's anything in Paxton.
There's not. But I would
So is
welcome them
that,
to try.
it goes back to what is the objective? Are we trying to build? Are we trying to maintain? Are we trying to grow? Are we driving TDT? Are we driving, what is it that we want to accomplish?
I think Mr. Bagby was correct in that we want to drive tourism, and I think some of that absolutely equates to they've got to drive TDT. That's a huge factor, but they've also got to drive the brand via the guest additions to the guest experience and enhancements to the guest experience. If those two things are happening with these events, and then it's even a cherry on top if the local population can enjoy it as well. So I just am trying, and I'm sorry, we have to move on. I realize that. I'm okay, and I understand respecting people's time that did the process, and I appreciate that. I just hope if my concern with going with a blanket, we're going to go ahead and do 75% and above, is that some of these folks that got in above the 75% mark, if staff uses their absolute best judgment, would drop down some. So I think I'm starting to lean toward giving staff a budget for the event grant program and asking them to work within the confines of that budget with the guidelines that we've given them on what you're trying to accomplish.
And if you want to respect the process but consider the fact there may be anomalies, add to that staff will have the ability within the budgeted amount to identify scoring outliers or scoring anomalies that staff can justify. Now, they're going to need a memo to file to show why they did it. It can't be, we really like so-and-so who runs the event. We really don't know so-and-so who proposed this event. But if there's one that's an anomaly that, hey, this is a long-standing event, we're not sure why it didn't meet the mark, that may get funded versus this thing that's a month-long event. We're not sure how it matches up. There's some anomalies. Let staff balance those. It doesn't mean they're going to completely throw it out, but give staff that discretion. If anybody ever asks why, staff will have it in file why they did it. It's about showing why we did something, not necessarily how on each occasion. At this point, at least, that's the only way you're going to move
I don't know
forward.
if I can restate that motion, but just general thoughts. Everybody kind of think that's a good plan.
Kelly, do you have that direction sufficient?
So we're gonna look at everyone that made 75 or higher, and the staff and I are gonna look at that and decide, should it be 75 or higher. We're gonna look at the ones that made less than 75. What I'm going to do is I'm going to compare scores from the last 3 years, if they've been a part of that, and see what that is. And then I will use the scores from the last 3 years and look at that and see where they would compare now, and see if any of the other ones should be brought up within, that should be brought higher than what they are now, if they are, if they have scores. If not, I will pull back out their application, and the leadership will go over that, and we will make reasons why we should do it.
So the motion would be to allocate $500,000 to the event grant program for 2026 and to task staff to use the scoring sheet in front of you under what she just, under their process they just laid out to allocate that $500,000. And somebody can so move that if they want.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Show it done.
Well, they're gonna fund it now, so there's not coming back for another vote.
I'll get it. I'll get it back to you. I'll get it back to you. Give me. It's a short week this week. Yeah, I'll get it to you, just like I send you anything else. I'll make sure, and if you have any questions about it, I'll answer it. But yes, we will move forward with this. Thank you.
All right, let's move to, thank you, Kelly. Let's move to item number 5, discussion and direction regarding PGA negotiation committee.
Great, Chair. And thank you all for being here today. So, based on the direction that was given to us by the BCC, we were tasked with putting together a committee to reopen negotiations with the PGA, and that direction was for myself, Commissioner Drake, Mr. Atkinson, and then a TDT or a bed tax collector to be the other individual as part of that committee. So I guess the question, the direction we're looking forward to today is, A, whether or not that bed tax collector is a council member, and if that's the direction, that opens itself up to a different conversation. And if it's not a TDC council member, would it be the will of the council to make recommendation on who that individual may be?
Yeah, Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
I watched that BCC meeting and had some of the same thoughts that I believe council brought up for us, was the fact that if it's a member of this board per se, then we would have some issues surrounding sunshine law and public notice. So with that being said, I guess my question would be, do we want to look at someone outside of this board that the board?
Well, you could include one, right, Clay? But no more than one?
Well, because you're on it, you are the one right now, because you're a member of this
Right.
council. So if the bed tax collector comes from this council, let me say this, I don't know what this council, what the BCC is gonna do. If they come back and say, well, we're gonna take that recommendation and approve the contract, we've basically become a recommendation or an advisory body in the negotiation. The negotiation committees can and can't fall under sunshine. It depends on what we do. Since we're in uncharted territory about what's gonna happen here, I do think we have to be careful with having 2 members of this council. We can safely have 1.
Counselor, did the Board of County Commissioners, was it reported to them, the vote that this council took on the PGA? Did they?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And it was also reported to them that, as I told you, that it takes a 4-1 vote to overcome something that's not included in the plan and not recommended to be included in the tourist development plan.
Well, what I had hoped was, prior to the wishes of the BCC formalizing, establishing a negotiating committee, is that I had offered that informally, that myself and Clay, and if there was someone else that would talk to them prior to the BCC making an official action, well, then there would be opportunities. But at this point, it's a worthless exercise, because, okay, if you're the receiving entity and you already know that the votes are there, where you don't have to pay anything, where you don't have to contribute anything, they're going to sit there and they're going to smile at Clay, and they're going to smile at me, and they're going to smile at everybody else, and they're going to say a lot of niceties, and then they're going to clasp their hands together and say, well, we feel like we don't want to go in that direction. And they're not going to budge 1 inch. They're not going to budge $1. Why would you? Unless you're willing, and Mr. Taylor articulated this very well, unless you're willing to say, we're not interested, you're never going to bring someone to the negotiating table. When you say formally, when you formalize a vote and you tell them, listen, there's one entity that is going to be the major beneficiary, but has yet to show any interest in participating, why would you negotiate if you know you're not going to have to? So, I mean, we can formalize a committee, we can make sure that we're in sunshine, we don't have this and we don't have that, and we can go and sit down with them and they're just going to laugh. But until you're willing to walk away from it, then they start getting the calculator out and they're like, wait a minute. All right, we have an opportunity to take in a millions of dollars, and now we're going to let our pride get in the way, and we're just going to tell the BCC that we're not interested. We'll take our ball and go somewhere else. I find that hard to believe. I find that somebody is going to go, all right, even if it's $50, okay? If you were presented with that, you said you got to pay $50, they would say yes. Right now they're going to say zero. But if you said, all right, $1,000, they're going to say yes. They're going to do it for $1,000. If you say $100,000, then they get their team together and then they say, okay, do we push back or do we just tell them we'll take the $100,000? All of that is moot if you're not willing to demonstrate that you're willing to walk away. And so I'll do whatever, but it's like I have been trying to say from day one, and we've had plenty of people that have presented in front of us that have offered up caveats and cautions for all the reasons that have been articulated on, the size of the budget, the terms, the risks, the things like that. But the other side is not going to change their position at all until they come to the realization that we're actually willing to just say, no, we're going to invest our money in other areas.
That's where we were until the county commission
That's what I'm
gave new
saying.
life to it. As you said, if there was another place for them to go for an October turn, they'd have gone.
Had the
So they
BCC
don't have-
said,
Right.
we're not going to
We're
do
not,
this,
and then just see what then.
I guarantee you Clay's phone would have rung
Not now.
immediately
No,
that
I'm
night.
I'm getting contacted,
Wouldn't
about
you
the
say so,
committee.
Clay? You think your phone would have rung that night?
I would have had a lot of different phone calls that night than what
Correct.
occurred, and they'd have been
And then guess what? They'd be like, all right, can we have a special meeting? Like, it's not too late, is it? We can have a special meeting. We just, there's some parliamentary procedures that have to happen, but they'll do it. It would have happened, but that's not what happened. And so,
Do we have to,
May I?
county commission now,
I mean, we can put together a committee
well, they
and
want that,
negotiate.
Can we say we don't have anybody?
Don't let it down.
Serve on it. Let the county commissioners, they feel like they're entrepreneurs and.
That's
they-
LeBron.
May I real quick? The only thing that I would ask, guys, and I respect everything that's been said, we have beaten this horse. We are an advisory capacity to the BCC. The BCC has spoken. They have asked us to put a committee together. We need to do that. If you remember, our initial recommendation out of this body was to put this exact committee together. I think we need to keep this as quick as we can. We all have strong feelings about it. We need to follow the BCC's direction, put the committee together in the best way we see fit, and move on to the next thing. That's just my two. Yes,
Well, he's already on there.
He's one. We have to. Thank you, Brian. Sorry about that.
So, Amy's correct. What happened was BCC, nobody has the terms and conditions of this contract. That's the first thing you need to do. If you're going to negotiate a contract, you have to have the specific terms and conditions of the contract. All that's been offered up is we got a great deal for you. It's going to give you these certain metrics on return, which we don't have any proof of, and all that. And so what this committee needs to do, first and foremost, is Mr. PGA, I need a copy of your contract. You can black out what you want to black out if it's a contract from a previous engagement, but I need the terms and conditions of what we're going to do business on.
That's what I've been asking for
And so that's
months.
Right, so that's what that committee needs to do.
But Mr. Kellenberger, let me ask you this. If you were them, why would they do that unless you made them?
Because I'm asking them to. I'm saying.
No, if you didn't ask them to do that, why would they?
They would not do.
They
They
would
would send you
not.
what they've already sent you.
Correct.
That's all, they have no
That's what I'm
intent to send you
saying.
anything other than a proposal.
We're on the same page, Commissioner Drake, is if we're going to negotiate a business deal, we have to have the specifics, and that's called a contract, terms and conditions. And so that's what we need to get. And then we need to decide as a committee, is it good for us or is it not good for us? But until we have that information, do we have that document sitting in front of us, we can't decide. Because all we've done up to this point is we've said as a body, hey, first we said, hey, we think it's a good idea. Then we said, well, we got some more information from department directors that give us more explanation of our budget. We don't think it's a good idea. BCC wasn't quite ready to give it up, and so they kicked it back to you and said, form a committee, get all the terms and conditions. That's what needs to happen. If the PGA doesn't want to give that up, you say, appreciate the opportunity, we're going to pass. And that'll get the reactions you want. But that's where we need to be right now.
Not,
That's
but
what-
everything you said is absolutely correct, sir, in theory, right? In practice, if you're the receiving entity and you already know that you can count to 3, when you put that document down there and we start blacking stuff out, they're going to smile at us. They're going to be like, nah, thank you, but no thank you. If they know they can already count to 3. That's what I'm saying.
I'm with you, but I'm not sure if they know they can count to 3. And I think it's the BCC asked this body to form a committee to get that information that I detailed, so that then that committee or that special committee can say, here is the terms and conditions of this. We recommend yay or we recommend nay, and then it's up to the BCC to do it.
And I don't want to go through negotiation strategy in this meeting, but I will add this. We are not, I think we can all understand, we are not dealing with an unsophisticated party to whom we are negotiating with. They've done this before. They've done it many more times than Walton County staff has. However, that being said, to Brian's point, a sophisticated party is watching this meeting, or
Right.
they're going to watch it. I feel confident they've heard your comments, Commissioner Drake, who was one of 5 board members who was not part of the discussion where the board voted to establish a committee. So they know they're down 1 right now, so they've got to run the table on the other 4.
And it's like I've said in the past, all I want is an opportunity for a fair shake to the taxpayers, to the residents, to the tourists, to the visitors, to the locals. I don't want to tell them no. I want us to figure out that sweet spot where we can partner in this. I do take offense with just putting it in a box, tying it up on a bow, put a little ribbon on it, and handing it over to them. That's where I have a little bit of angst. And Clay, had we taken the vote on that day when it came up in the BCC, it would have passed 4-1. So they know that. So I'm glad they're listening, and I can't talk behind the scenes. I have to talk in public. But what I'm trying to get across is that if we do sit down and formally negotiate and they put a little document in front of us and we start doing things, if they know based on the comments that were made from all of the commissioners collectively, they know where they're at right now. So, and I think that the TDC council, took a bold step when we said, let's send it back up to them, and we voted overwhelmingly to do that. But you said let the private sector take care of the private sector.
They won't say a word, and I think it's because the PGA has said that they'll take other people as sponsors, not just us. They're going to sell them too. So wherever it's held, that entity will pay PGA some money, and it'll look like their tournament.
Again, I don't want to get into negotiation strategy. To your point, Commissioner Drake, I will simply say there are parts, and this goes to what Brian said about the contract. I'm going to go a step further. The devil's in the details. There are parts of what we understand they would have in the contract which was presented to the BCC right now. And we talked about this at our budget workshop last week, or our special budget meeting last week. Their advisement to us was, well, what happens if a storm comes? Well, we'll give you new dates, and if the host can't accommodate those new dates, we'll just move the tournament. What do you mean we'll move the tournament? Pensacola, Bay County, Tallahassee. It'll go somewhere, don't worry.
Hey.
Well, I don't think the board understood that because that was something the BCC had no way of knowing at that time. I will say this, when we say, if we do go forward and sit down and meet with them, our starting point is you may or you may not have 4 votes, but you're going to have to present a contract that gets 4 votes, and the concept has 4 votes. The contract doesn't because they've never seen it. And I think it's a very hard sell on anybody, including the BCC, that we'd spend $6 million and they'd move the tournament to Pensacola because we had a storm, because Hurricane Michael hits and, well, we're not going to give it up and we're not going to get our money back. That's a tough sell on anybody. And frankly, I don't know that we could legally justify doing it. So I think we have more arrows in our quiver right now than perhaps it appears. But I will tell you, until we sit down and ask them to give us the full set of terms so we can see what is and is not able to be negotiated, there's nothing to bring back. But it's to this council. If you want to appoint a, I guess really what we need to know is the board's appointed a committee and they asked for a bed tax collector to be on there. I do not recommend it be a member of this council for potential sunshine law purposes, but the board openly gave you the opportunity to designate someone, and I would take that opportunity to pick one of your peers that you know is able to address this, analyze this, and assess this, and participate on that committee. So that's what I would encourage you to look at doing. And we may waste them an hour of time, but I'm here to do it. If that's what y'all want me to do, we'll waste an hour of our time or more.
And I don't have to serve on the committee. If someone else on this council wants to serve in lieu of me serving.
We need you on this committee.
But I'm saying, what I'm saying is, I don't have to do it
No.
if someone else.
We hope you will.
I mean, I'm willing to.
Here we are looking at one weekend event for 5 or 6 million, and Kelly's up here with her budget, and we're taking her from 700,000 to 500,000. For
Ma'am.
many of these events are all 12 months, local, people are used to them. And then we're looking, or the county commission is now, because it's not in our budget at all to have a $5 or $6 million expense for how many years? A minimum of 3. And she's begging for $500,000 for an annual. Thank you.
Hold on 1 second.
And I would add one more, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd add one more thing. In lieu of recent state legislation signed into law by the governor, we have hurricane season here. And then now we have an incentive for renourishment that those dollars could go towards that would enable more beach for the public to enjoy. So
Well, we can't use
to
our
say-
nourishment money for this, so don't worry, that's
but
not an
this-
option.
But the allocation of other funds and the way these systems impact systems, and we're going to move money here to pay for this and pay for that, it's going to come down to the fact that they need to look at, we have other priorities to take care of too as we do this.
You're welcome.
I just want to caution, guys, we are going down the exact same rabbit hole that we have gone down many, many meetings. We need to focus on the fact that the Board of County Commissioners has spoken. They have asked for this committee. We need to select a committee or a bed tax collector or a list thereof that we feel Matt could approach that could accept this responsibility. And then a lot of us need to get back to our offices the week of the 4th of July. So I would really strongly, Matt, do you have some suggestions for us as possible players? Would you like for us to offer suggestions?
I would defer to you all first, and then we're happy to offer up some names that we had discussed internally.
Jennifer Frost came to my mind, former chair of this body, and I believe she's Vicasa. Scott Russell came to my mind, has been a seated member of this committee.
Well, somebody that worked in Sandestin may.
I think anyone that has would.
I think so.
So I would caution us to stay away from anyone who has the
Where the event might be held.
Correct. I mean, I don't think.
Can we stipulate it needs to be at Eagle Spring?
No rabbit holes, gang, no rabbit holes.
Right.
Bed tax collectors.
I think, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
The
that's
answer is yes.
for the bed, yeah, that's for that committee to decide.
Food truck, we got them.
Is there anybody in this room that would be interested?
How about Mr. Bagby or Ms. Harris? Bagby?
Ms. Harris?
Oh.
I love each and every one of you. I really think, you know, I don't think I'm the right person. I absolutely do not think I'm the right person. I would do anything I possibly can to help. I come to these meetings because I want to help the other bed tax collectors. When they call me today, they can't come because they're small bed tax collectors and say, what happened? I want to help them. I have some great ideas for Josh on things y'all can do in the South End that I'll help you with to help promote your activities up there, because we have tons of people in January and December up in our building that don't know about the Light Festival and things, and we need to help you advertise. But I just think I'm very opinionated. I think Brad is 100% wrong when he says they see that they've already got 4 votes. I think that's a total miscommunication. I don't think the BCC has 4 votes to pass this. As a matter of fact, I'd really pretty much be willing to bet my life on it right now. They don't have 4 votes to pass this, because I think the ones are all studying everything that's coming out. They're asking questions. They're figuring out the contract that's been heard about. I'm hearing from a lot of people, so I don't think they have 4 votes. I do think y'all need a committee. I think Scott Russell would be absolutely wonderful. He's been on this board forever. He's a bed tax collector. He's very smart. I think he would be great. Jim Bagby, I think would be absolutely perfect, but Jim doesn't live in Walton County, and y'all don't need that kind of heat either. So I think, you know, I appreciate y'all, but no, absolutely not. I would do anything y'all ask me to, but that's a no.
That's the longest no on record, by the way. That's longer than one of my no's.
If you try to pick one today, you don't know better. Once you just let Matt, reach out to some tax collector, and trust his judgment, correct person on the committee.
So moved. Again, guys, from a timing perspective, we got to get this. Let's all stop eating, sleeping, and breathing the PGA discussion on behalf of the commission. I'm sure they're tired of it. We're tired of it. Yeah. I would like Matt to leave armed today with selecting a committee member and let these guys go and start these discussions so that we can put this behind us. Yeah, I move that we authorize staff to select a bed tax collector that they feel is appropriate, Matt, that feels appropriate, to be a member of this committee, and that they get going.
With the exclusion that they have no golf ties.
Very fair. Thank you for adding that.
Or ties to a potential venue.
Invested incentive.
Yeah, any potential stakeholder that would be the host.
That just covers.
Perfect.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, show it done.
And if I may, just real quick, just for the record, while we're on that subject, and I'll button it up from there, the topic about the contract. So I do want it to be on the public record that we've asked multiple times for a redacted contract, just so we can see the terms and language that was in that contract. And we were told that they would not provide a contract until material terms were agreed to. Just wanted to put that on the public record.
Thank you.
Now, what is the necessary vote for approval, Clay?
At the BCC, 4-1, it has to be 4, it will have to be a 4-1. There's no way to get to a supermajority of a majority plus 1, which is the way the statute's worded. So if you got 5, it needs 4. If you've got 4, it still needs 4. It has to be unanimous. If it has 3, you can't get there, because those are still bare majorities at 2 or 3, and then at 3 is. You just got to be unanimous to get there.
Thank you. I was seeking clarification based on since they took action and sent it back to us, if it goes back to, as it travels back up to our level,
it's an amendment
to the plan. Does it still
to the plan.
Require 4-1?
Because it's
no
going to be an
longer
amendment to the
3-2
plan.
approved.
To be clear, the statutory requirement is amendments to the tourist development plan require supermajority vote.
Sure.
I'll use that phrase. This is an amendment to the plan. This is a multi-year budgeted requirement. It has to become part of our tourist development plan It's not necessarily that this council voted no. I want to be very clear. That's not what makes it that way. It's the fact that this council didn't vote to include it in the plan. The board's going to have to override that. It's not in your budget. It's not in your plan. For them to go above and beyond what you recommend, it requires that.
All right, does anyone else have anything that they would like to offer? Questions? Anyone from the board? Ms. Edwards?
I apologize that I was late. I just wanted to follow back up on what y'all decided for the steering committee.
Basically, we were just given an overview. It will be an hour to an hour and a half commitment a month. We do need to do it separate from these meetings because we need to be in a different mindset, which I completely respect and understand. From a strategic planning to a decision making, it's more of an interactive environment. These are the things shared with us. The one thing I had listed that we did not ask about that I was going to ask before the meeting ends is any thoughts on the reserve study. Otherwise, he just presented the process to us.
And what's the financial cost then from doing each month? For us personally, because we have to advertise, pay for staff time. What's the financial cost by doing that?
I mean, I think to run an ad is what, it's like 60 or 80 bucks to run the public notice
I think
ad.
it's, well, all the
and then
ELs I sign are much more than that.
For a meeting public notice?
Yes, but I mean, those aren't the only costs associated
Right.
with, obviously. I mean, if we're doing it monthly, and what is that time frame? If we start at what point and then ending?
So it's a 6-month process, and Scott may be better suited to address your questions there. But from our end, I mean, I think, like I said, I think a meeting notice is $80 to put a meeting notice in the Defuniak Herald, which is where we typically notice our meetings. And then, I mean, if we do it on a monthly basis, our thought initially was that we would do it on the same day as the meeting, but, I don't know if that's going to make the most sense, kind of to the point that Scott made earlier, is trying to separate, having our regular meeting, then having enough time to clear mental space to shift into that steering committee mode. So, I mean, I think if we're looking at, multiple meetings a month, then, that's definitely something to consider. But I thought, it might make more sense originally when we talked about it to do them on the same day, but I think that's what we need to decide.
And the bandwidth of all of the members here to add in an additional meeting each month. And staff time for additional, and I apologize I was late. That's very overwhelming, I think. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
It was at the end.
There is a nimbleness to the steering committee that is, I think, helpful to the process. And I think one of the questions you're going down is the idea of the public notification of this process and the public participation. We work in communities all over the world, North America, and we understand the importance of the public process. And I think I would want to sort of double down on one thing I didn't, which is that whatever is ultimately decided is the TDC board's approval, and that's a very public process, and that's an important integral part to the community is the public process. But there is a nimbleness to the steering committee that we talked a little bit about mindset that does make the public process somewhat cumbersome, and there is an enormous amount of competitive information. The one element of a public process when you're talking about a competitive industry is there's an enormous amount of competitive information that you're going to be discussing that is not necessarily built for the public domain, because you're going to be talking about issues that are relative to you, your competition, your advantages, your points of differentiation, and those aren't typically public conversations.
If this board meets, it is part of the sunshine law.
I'm personally very much in favor of making it public. I don't think it's fair to the bed tax collectors. We've been appointed this position to make some of these decisions. We've been a part of these meetings, these other discussions, but I think it's also very important to have as many of the bed tax collectors available to come and listen and provide feedback. So I'm very much in support of the public.
And just from a staff level, we have no preference on that layout, right? We just want to present you all both of the options.
What the final decision, when does that need to be made for this? Of when that?
So when we talk about a final decision, I think what this board decided was we would prefer to be the steering committee.
Right.
So as I see it, our options are, we are the steering committee in publicly noticed meetings, or only one of us will be able to represent on the steering committee so that then they are not in the public. Are we
Right.
going back to that decision?
No,
or-
no, no, just today, did we make a decision on when we would be meeting and we confirmed the cadence of that, or no? Just a presentation?
So we'll work with Scott and his team to kind of get you all the cadence of those meetings moving forward, and we'll work with them to get the first meeting scheduled and move that process forward. I mean, today we were really just looking for the direction of whether or not you all, as the council, wanted to be the steering committee or not.
Yeah,
And
I would
we've
agree.
got that
I think we said
direction.
that in the last
Yeah.
meeting.
So,
And maybe even if we did, if you look at the former strategic planning, it was usually a 2 full day commitment, but this maybe becomes pretty much for your calendar, a day commitment a month, and maybe we separate the meetings by lunch, I don't know, just
Break for
something that
lunch and
allows
then
people to
come back.
decompress and get their head in the right space to then go into steering. That's just something to think about.
yeah. Sounds good. And then I was just gonna make note, if you all have all of the directors' updates available to you in your packet, so in lieu of, us all coming up, if it's your wish, you have those available, so.
Anything else? All right, let's move into our director's update.
Commissioner, that he has them all in there. We were okay to read them.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, we're good if you all want us to, button up.
That co-op selling is happening again and next week. You'll get some more stuff out. We did not sell out of them, so anyone who missed their opportunity to do that, I will be sending that back out to all of our partners and stakeholders if they want to. So look for that email from me, and again, that allows any partner or anyone that wants to participate in co-oping with the tourism department.
All right. Is there any other public comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Show that done.